Hi everybody, we got a quick video today to show you how to remove and reinstall a motor in the car. I've had a lot of new people to RC buying the cars, and that's one of the common questions, so we want to do a video on that. So first thing you're going to want to do is you can either use the Allen wrench that comes with the car, or if you purchase one of the 1.5 millimeter hex drivers, or if you have another one of these from a different brand, you can use that as well. First thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the hood off, and you can do that by taking the front screw out. Set that aside, pull the hood off, and then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to locate the motor wire going into the speed control. So the motor wire is the 3 black wires with the white plug on the end. So you're going to want to just grab those wires kind of close to the plug and just easily pull up and just gently rock it back and forth at the same time. And what that'll do is that'll just pop right out of there, just like that. So next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to either use the nut driver that comes with the car, this one here, or you can use the aftermarket nut driver that we sell as well. So you're going to want to take the rear wheels off the car. It's easier to do all this step with that. When you pull these rear wheels off, if the hex comes off with the wheel, just make sure you don't lose this little pin right here. You can see that comes out, so just make sure you take that pin out and set it aside. And you'll want to go ahead and take the hexes out of the wheel, set those aside because it'll be easier to put those back in. Take the left rear tire off here. And same thing, watch for the pin. Pull the hex out of the wheel. So then what you're going to want to do is you're going to need to disconnect the radius rods, the shocks, and the Panhard bar. So you can either use the Allen wrench that comes with the car, and you can just slide that underneath the radius rod and just pry up, and it'll just pop right off. And you can do that same thing on these here as well. Do the same with the Panhard bar, just like that. And then when you get to the shocks, you don't really need to use a wrench or anything. You can probably just get your fingernail behind there and just easily just pop those off, and they'll just easily come off. So once you get all those popped loose, you can just kind of tip the rear end up in the back and then just lift the rear end straight out of there, and the wire will come with it. So we'll set the car aside. So the motor, to take the motor out, you're going to see a series of screws right here. It's going to be these 2 screws right here that hold the motor in. So just loosen those up, and you don't have to take them all the way out. There's only just a little bit of thread engagement there. So you'll just take those loose till the motor's free, and then the motor will just come right out. There's a pinion gear on the end and a hole in there. So you got the motor out. Same type of thing if you're going to put this motor back in, or you're going to put another one back in, just line that up. Now one thing you want to watch when you put the motor back in, there's a series of holes here. There's 4 holes on the motor. What you want to do is just make sure that the wire is sticking like kind of towards the back of the rear end. And you can pull the motor away and get the screws lined up. Just kind of rotate it around until you feel the screw hole line up, and then just start tightening the screws down. Now when you do put the new motor back in, you don't need to tighten these screws very tight. I mean, literally they can just be like you can just run it down until they touch, and then that's good. If you over tighten these, you'll get a bind in the rear end. Because the rear end's all plastic, and if you crank down on it too much, it kind of twists everything. So you don't need to put very much on there. So you can just, there again, just loosen those up when you get it tight. And the other thing you can do as well is you can kind of pull, the motor has a little bit of play. Just make sure the motor's kind of pulled away from the gear, so you can just kind of pull it this direction here. So we usually just put our fingers right here and just kind of pry over, and then just barely tighten those motor screws up. And then you can rotate the rear axle, and it should rotate fairly free. If you got it too tight, or if you got a bind there, you'll kind of hear it grinding a little bit. Just loosen those up and just retighten them. And like I said, don't tighten them very tight. So when you go to put this back in the car, one of the easiest things is when on this Panhard bar is just make sure you got the Panhard bar sticking up like this, because when you put it in there, if it falls down, it's kind of harder. You know, it's a little bit hard to get over, or get it on lined up with the ball stud. So get all the radius rods pointing in the right direction. When you drop this back in here, you're going to want to put this wire, kind of feed it underneath the driver right here, and go right to the front. So if you can kind of put the plug in there like that and just feed it in there. Put the motor in there first, and then just kind of rock the rear end in the car just like that. Goes in there pretty easy, but if you try to do it another way, it's kind of hard, and you'll have to force it, and that's never good. So you can kind of move these radius rods out of the way. The first one to hook up is the Panhard bar, because that's kind of the hardest to get to after you have the radius rods hooked up. So if you just push that down, and we just use like a small pair of needle nose, and you can get that in there, kind of get that lined up on the ball stud, and then just, you know, kind of push that together and it'll pop right on there. Same thing with these. You don't have to use the plier on these, but you can get them lined up and just push them on. Push this one on. Push this one here on, and the rear end's in there. Then you're going to want to make sure you hook up the shocks as well. So just get those lined up and just push on the ball cup, and they'll just snap right on. And do this side here. And you're good to go. And one thing we like to do is just make sure everything moves free, you know, after you get it all back in there. Good thing to do at this point is go ahead and make sure that you can get to your motor wire did come up through the front, and then just plug it back in. There's a little notch or a little like a tab on here. I'll try to get a good picture of it there. But that gets lined up with the notch in the receiving plug down there. So if you just line those up, just get it, it'll kind of go down a little bit and then just push down and it's fully seated. You can kind of see how it fully seats there. And it kind of snaps in when it's fully seated. So you just push it in and it fully snaps. And then the next thing you want to do is just put the pins back in, put the wheel hexes back on. Make sure when you put the pins in that the pin is centered on the axle. If you have it to one side, like if it's pushed to this side, the hex isn't going to go all the way on, so get it even on both sides. And then when you put the hex on there, you can get it lined up, and there's a corresponding notch in here. You'll just get that lined up. And if it's not, going in right away, you just have to push over on the pin a little bit and it'll fall right in there. So that's what you want it to look like. You don't want to see that pin showing. If the pin's showing, it's not seated correct. So just move that pin if you need to and then just push it on. Do the same with the other side. Put the wheels and tires back on, put the hood back on, and you're good to go. That's everything you need to know about changing the motor. If you have any issues, hit us up on our support email on our website, or hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Make sure you keep watching our website and all our social media sites for more things to come. And thanks for watching.